out of town and I was all alone, so as I was thinking of these memories, I just kind of picked a verse, and I'm not a poet, so bear with me, but anyway, maybe it'll express some of the memories, that things that that stood out in my mind. Okay, dear Dad, although my memory is not very good, I tried to remember all that I could of my many memories down through the years, with all of the joys, pluses and tears. I remember all the, quote, friendly discussions we had, me on the workbench, you in work clothes were clad. We discussed many topics down through time, me of course knowing all the right answers were mine. It's amazing how much wiser I got with age, as I finally began to grow out of that stage. Your advice and your counsel began to make sense, as I was becoming a little less dense. You always had plenty of time for me, to help me with homework or whatever it be, to teach me whatever I needed to know, always encouraging me to reach upward and grow. I remember all of the bets we used to make, from a dime on a racehorse to how long it would take, to be the first ready to make Mama proud, to be very fast we were neither in doubt. The three of us had lots of fun on the go, from picnics to bowling, ball games, and rodeo. A lot of vacations to Utah we made, to visit all of the relatives' ways. The time was passed by playing road games and singing old songs like Home on the Range. The songs that you taught me I'll never forget. I've taught to my children and still sing them yet. I remember it well in the shower you'd sing. Out through the open window, your voice it did ring. The singing always made us smile, as we really enjoyed your very own unique style. Whenever a special whistle we'd hear, we always knew that you were somewhere near. But due to a dental's fixable bliss, now that whistle we surely do miss. I remember all the shopping trips that we took. You're always trying to get off the hook, complaining that shopping just wasn't your style, but really down deep you loved every mile. On one of those shopping trips when walking about, I saw a cute outfit I couldn't live without. A secret tip later you made without me, and on Christmas morning, it was under the tree. One day to the temple we went to be sealed. All of my wishes were then us being fulfilled. A special joy then filled my heart to know that death would not keep us apart. One teenage birthday when Mom was out of town, I was feeling very blue and a little bit down. The house was empty as you had to work. Even though it was my birthday, you couldn't shirk. As I walked in the dining room, to my surprise, what things I saw there brought tears to my eyes. A note on the table, a little watch, plus a beautiful cake. Dinner in the oven, all this effort for me you did make. I was thrilled, I can tell you, and happy indeed. Your efforts to please me did surely succeed. Now, Mom wasn't quite so thrilled when she learned what you'd spent. She thought maybe you'd been just a bit extravagant. Your praise made me proud of my cooking and baking, even though sometimes a big mess I was making. I remember my dismay at my very first pie. It tastes like your mother's, was your tactful reply. I know there were times when your patience I tried. There are things more important than boys, you cried. My hairdos, my makeup, and my attire were certainly not always your heart's desire. Your brand of discipline, I remember it well, although at the time I didn't think it so swell. Somehow you got the job done without taking me over your knee. No matter how much I fumed and yelled, your decision remained consistent. When I left home to go out on my own, Mom and your support was the same as when home. Though many mistakes I made, it is true, there was always a home I knew I could return to. When Dale and I married, you gained a new son, and immediately your friendship he won. The fishing stories began right away, and still continue on to this day. As each of our three children came along, your affection obviously for each one very strong. The trips to Grandma and Grandpa's were anxiously awaited. The fun times we had there made us all feel elated. Many vacations we spent all together, seeing lots of good scenery in all kinds of weather. All of these memories remain with us today, a special one about which I have something to say. A surprise trip to Hawaii for us all you had planned. Very soon on 5 different islands we would get to land. Needless to say, we were all very excited and certainly more than delighted. We will always be grateful to Mom and to you for making this special dream to come true. The time that we had there was just simply great, and for this we really do appreciate. A familiar memory that comes to my mind, your growing flowers of every kind. A rake or a shovel I see in your hand, a really green thumb in the field for the land. Many a shovel of dirt we did move, helping us landscape our new homes to improve. Due to your your hard work and steady perfection, it surely would pass the most stringent inspection. You and Mom were always there. We needed your help and some extra care. During Dell's illness, you came to help out. Your help was appreciated. Of that, there's no doubt. You and Mom cared for the children, or whatever was needed, gave us moral support and words that were heeded. For 11 and 1/2 hours, you sat there with me, gave me support during Dale's surgery. Your helpfulness to others is an example to me, especially during Mom's illness. We admired your care and sympathy. And though we miss her not being here, her memory and love will always be near. I know for a time life seemed hard to bear. You probably thought life just doesn't seem fair. Then to take a picture because of your green thumb, a special lady into your life did come. Now I probably could recall some more, but this poem is long enough to be sure. Many more memories we hope are few. We wish on this special night dedicated to you. Thanks for the memories. I love you.
Now we have a guest book out in the other room that we'd like all of you to sign, if you will, please. And also, after we get through here, we need to clear these tables up. So if you'd like to all retire into the other room, we'll get this cleaned up and be ready for our other friends and guests to come and join with us in celebrating Dan's birthday and the program we're going to have. So just feel free to visit and just wander around and do what you like to do. We've only got about a half hour before. Dan, would you come here, please? Harry, you're going to have to see where you can sit here and watch this program. What? I see. And we want to all thank him for that real great rendition of drum music. Wasn't that great? We're going to have to move the piano down this way so we can have the mic. So if you can bear with us for a few moments. We're going to have dancing now. Well, anyway, here is Dan. a most interesting man. He's the apple of my eye. I'd like you to know why I love him so. At least I'd like to try. A blue-eyed, curly-haired blonde was he, a sweet, bashful boy from his mother's knee, friendly yet shy, with a twinkle in his eye. He's made many friends, you can see. From age 3, his mother raised children 7, when his father, unfortunately, was called to heaven. The family stayed close together, in spite of the weather, and a great family they turned out to be. Dan led an interesting life with Theresa, his first wife. Unfortunately, she had to die. And now that I've come along, I've a smile and a song, for our lives have reached a new high. We've had fun fishing, golfing, and traveling all over. We've enjoyed life. It's been a real bit of clover. With my children of 4 and Dan's Venice we adore, our posterity of 37 makes a wee bit of heaven. We feel that our cup runneth o'er. So let's all spend this day with visiting and play, and look forward to many years more. Thanks, Dan. We'll sit you down there. All right, now we'll hear from we'll now have a dance by my daughter Vanette's children, Vanette and Gary Craigenbrink, and their children Shalas, Alan, Chelsea, and Lexus. Song by John and Kathy Bride's family. A song first. This one first, anyway.
Well, we might be growing old, but we've still got a long life ahead of us, and we're going to have a lot of fun together, Dan. And as I've said before, our families are our greatest joy, and we're glad to have them all with us. We have first of all, I want to introduce Dan's daughter, Venice. Where are you, Venice? And her husband, Dale Allred, and their children, Carrie and her husband David from Salt Lake. We have Pam and her husband Domingo from Delta. Will you stand? And the children, where are they? Oh, okay. Zachary and Kaylin. I couldn't see Mother Pam there. And Todd. Todd still lives with his family in Bishop. Okay, and then my family are here. Ken, my oldest son, is here. He with his wife Sue and their 4 children were unable to come tonight because they're taking care of their great-grandmother. And she's 95 years old, so they couldn't come. And my next one is Catherine Bright and her husband John, and Debbie and Becky, stand up, and where are the rest of them? Danny, and Mary Ann, Lindsay, and our next son, let's see, who's the next one? Lynette, Regan Brink, and her husband Gary, and their children, Alice and Alan, and Chelsea and Lexus, and Paul, the little one. And my youngest son, Scott, is here someplace. Where is he? Over there. And his wife and young son couldn't come because she teaches school and he's in school. And besides, they're expecting their second baby 10 years after their first done. So we're happy about that. So we'll have 35 next. The next one. So now we'll continue with the program, and the Brights are going to present this program. And we're going to tell you the story of Daniel Leigh Wade. Yes, Dan, this is your life.
If you can bear with us for just a minute, we're not quite comfortable with this arrangement.
was a cute little baby and was probably rocked in a cradle too, but on Leigh Hill in the old family home in Cedar City. He was a cute little boy with blonde curly hair. The boys and ladies all liked to kiss him. He was a real lady killer even at that young age. His widowed mother had a hard time financially supporting 7 children, so when Dan was 10, she had the opportunity to manage the log cabin inn at Leeds. So leaving Dan and his 3 brothers and 2 sisters and taking 6-year-old Tom, she moved to Leeds. Dan had to stay in Cedar City to attend school, as Leeds only had a small 1-room school. His summers from then on were spent at Hamilton's Fort, where he lived with his sister Ann Afton and her husband Jack Middleton, working on their farm and sometimes herding sheep. Once, when he was out with the sheep, working for another man, he had to live on rice for 2 weeks because supplies hadn't arrived. Jack Leigh, what have you to share in your association with Dan, your cousin? Would you like to?
I didn't know that Dan had so many friends. When I took this assignment, they promised me there wouldn't be more than half a dozen people here to listen. Dan and I was pretty close through our younger life. We lived just across the street from one another. And the first time that I can really remember him, I was over to his house one day, and he wasn't very old then. And he was outside taking care of his horses, which consisted of about a dozen beer bottles with strings around their necks. He'd drag them around the lot and tie them up to the fence and feed them some hay and some water. But you know, Dan, he had a hard time to learn how to walk. He's 2 years old and he still couldn't walk, and his mother didn't know what to do. So she got the bright idea one day that if she'd take a little red chair and set him on it down by the chicken coop where he could watch the chickens walk around, that he'd learn how to walk. After a couple of days, he got on pretty good, just so he could walk. But this is the way he walked around when he was about 6 years old. We were pretty close, and we spent a good share of our early life together. As we moved along, we went through the marble stages, and we went through the stilt stages, and all that. We'd have a pair of stilts, all different lengths. We went through the marble stages. Then, of course, he had to go to school, and after school, we had a nice ice pond close, which we spent a lot of time at in the winter. In the summertime, we played a lot of basketball, baseball, and that, I always liked to be near Dan. It seemed like if Dan was close to me, why, I could really, that's what I liked. I was the only boy in our family, and as we had a lot of farm work to do, and sometimes it got pretty hectic. So Dad would say, why don't you go over and get Dan to come and give you a lift? Boy, was I happy. Anytime that I could get Dan over there to help us, why, we was really happy. Well, we moved along till well, Dan and Gerald came over and lived with us one winter when they went to school. And we was pretty close there because we all slept in the same bed. But one of our assignments was to go out in the West Hills and pick up our fall supply of wood. So on a Friday afternoon, we'd have the horses hooked up the wagon with our grub box and our bedroll and hay for the horses. And we'd jog on out west to the Three Pigs country after wood. Well, near the foot of the hills, there was a one-room cabin that we'd always camp in. There's a fireplace in it, and we'd gather the wood, and we'd fix our cook our dinner and our breakfast, put out our bed. And one problem we had, the cows used it too, so we had a little cleanup to do before we could lay out our bed. Well, by nightfall, Dan and I, we was pretty tired, but Gerald, he wanted to stay awake later and listen to the late show on TV. Early in the morning, we'd be up and back up in the hills, and Gerald, he took care of the horses, and Dan and I, we were pulled the chains around and took our axes and took care of the chopping and fitting of the wood. This was a lot of fun. We really enjoyed it. And these trips, we took lessons on how to roll Bull Durham. So my mother, this was supposed to be a secret. And my mother found it out, and that's one reason I'm not as tall as I was. We went on through the Scouts, and we really had a good time in the Scouts. So we go on our hikes, overnight hikes, and in our swimming lessons, we'd get in our own Model T Ford and go down to the Birken Hot Springs. And that was really good trips, going down there and taking our lesson, learning how to swim. Well, we was kind of getting used to liking girls too about that time, and my dad would let me take the Model T Ford to Mutual once a week if I took my two sisters, and we all went, and I'd bring them home. So we'd go up to Mutual in our own Model T and dump the girls out. We always found there's some girls waiting around there to go for a ride. So Dan and I would pick up a couple of girls, and we'd ride around town during the Mutual. One night, we had a couple of girls, and they were two sisters. And the one of them was really cute, and of course she was in the back with Dan, because he always grabbed the cutest, the prettiest girls, no matter what. As we was riding around, this girl I had in the front, she kept bugging me about, she wanted to drive. So finally I give in, let her drive, and she was over. We was going out north of town on the road, and all at once there was some horses right in the middle of the road. She had no idea how to stop the car, and I couldn't get the brake. The next thing, we had a horse across the engine, and our windshield splattered all over. So that ended up our going to the Mutual on Wednesday night. But I'll tell you, Dan and I, we had a lot of good times together. We rode horses a lot. We had one horse, and he was always on it, going somewhere. And this horse had a really bad fall about jumping sideways. And we'd be jogging along, talking, all at once. Something would scare this horse, and out he'd go, and down Dan would go, and he always pulled me down first so that he would light on top of me. He never did get hurt. I don't ever remember Dan ever getting hurt. Well, since he was a year ahead of me in school, I don't know whether it's because he was smarter or whether I was dumber. But anyway, when we got to school, our friends changed, they were different, and soon he was going to go in his way, and I was going to go in my way. And then I was going to work, and Dan was going to work. The last time I saw Dan was when he was starting to court his first wife. And the only last time I think I remember seeing him was standing in the door of the storage room in the old BAC girls' dormitory, waiting for a turn to go in there and sit with his wife. Well, I never did see Dan for many years until I came back here to retire. That's been many years ago. And I'll tell you, I was glad to see him, and I think a lot of Dan. I always figured him as a brother rather than just a cousin. He's a great guy, no wonder he's got so many friends. Thank you.
sing, sweetheart of mine. Goodbye forever, old fellas and gals. Goodbye forever, old sweethearts and pals. God bless them. Gee, but I'd give the world to see that old gang of mine.
Dan's teenage years proved to be quite an exciting and interesting period of his life. He had several friends he palled around with. Together they livened up the town. Rex Harris can fill us in on some of those experiences of that old gang.
I don't know whether I'm being called here as a defense witness or a witness for the prosecution. But I can go either way, whichever. Well, we did have kind of an old gang. So maybe I better kind of explain what maybe a gang might be. Now, these little kids sitting down here, they probably said, "Ooh, Grandpa was a gangster, huh?" Well, it wasn't quite that way. We had about 5 couples. I hope I can remember them all. Some of them are still with us and some of them are gone. But there's Dee and Elna Arthur, Claude and Helen Dix, Dan and Theresa Wade, Rex and Flossie Harris. Who did I miss, Dan? There's one of them. Oh, Jack and Amanda Pace, of course. We were quite a gang. This is the time of in history when we had Prohibition. Now these little kids will get the wrong impression, but I've got to tell them first that Dan always went to church. Now I know he did, because his mother would give him $1 on Saturday night to go to the dance on condition that he went to church on Sunday. So I know he never missed any dances, so I assume he never missed any churches. But anyway, that's the kind of a gang we had. We'd go to dances all over the country. You younger folks don't remember, I guess, open air dances. Some of you people who are kind of feeble like me, you can remember. But we would go to the open air dances. Oh, we'd go down to the junction over here at Harrisburg. We'd go out to New Harmony. We'd go over to Canara. We'd go up to Parowan. And Panguitch. There was a special attraction there in Panguitch. It kind of, Dan liked to take us over to Panguitch so that he could see Theresa. I remember when I first met Theresa, by the way. I was one of the school officials in the old BAC. I think I was student body president or something. But I had to sign all these letters to all the high school graduates, inviting them to come to BAC to go to school. Well, it happened that Theresa was one of them who took the bait and came over to BAC to go to school. And we had the school dance up at the old CSA Hall in Cedar City. How many of you old timers remember that old CSA Hall? Not too many that lived in Cedar at that time. Anyhow, I met Theresa up at that dance, and I took her home. She lived in the dormitory out to BAC. That's the first time that I met Theresa. As soon as she saw Dan, why, she didn't go with me anymore. Okay, I figured that out. Anyway, oh, that was it. That was it. I thought maybe it was his good looks, but I couldn't figure that out. Anyhow, we go to these dances. We went to all of our Spilsbury's fights over at Panguitch and Palo and what have you. But I remember particularly one, must have been, I don't know, it was Christmas Eve, but anyway, they had a midnight dance at Palo Canyon. And we kind of got all the gang together as much as we could. As I recall that there was, D. Arthur had his car, and there was Dan and I and Claude Dix and my girlfriend Flossie. We're all in this one car. We got going up the canyon. And lo and behold, here's a policeman come out there and stopped us. Well, I was telling you it was Prohibition time, and homebrew was kind of, you know, kind of a common thing for kids to show their independence. So we go searching the car, and he come up with a little bit of homebrew, not very much, you know. He started out asking us our names. Claude Dix, he thought I'd give you some phony name. Jack, I believe, I know whether Jack wasn't there, but D. Arthur, D came up with some kind of a phony name. Dan came up with some phony name. And this policeman was, he was a highway patrolman named Adams, Red Adams. He looked me right in the eye. He says, Harris, don't you give me any false names. I know you. Anyhow, that's it. He came up into the dance afterwards, put his arm around us and told us he just, not to get worried, that they ever just didn't want to have any accidents up the canyon or anything. But it was kind of an experience, and we had those little experiences sometimes, and we got a little careless with the word of wisdom, you know. Remember another time we went fishing. I think it was Dan and Dee and I. We went over to Panguitch Lake, and we must have had some kind of refreshments that didn't agree with us. I don't know. But anyway, I was in the back of this pickup of Paces. They drove us down to a little place alongside of the, wasn't on the lake, but down by the stream that goes into the lake. A lady come out and she said, I was late out there in the back of the pickup, because I was just asleep. Don't misunderstand, I just asleep. Anyhow, she said, what's the matter with that boy? And old Jack Vasey said, oh, he's all right, he just had a little sunstroke. She said, oh my goodness, let me go in and get my book, we'll see what to do for sunstroke. And Jack says, well, no, he says, never mind, I'll fix him. He went and got a bucket of water, he threw it all over me. I got up and he took off on a run. He's bigger than I was anyway, but he ran anyway. Got right close to the edge of the pond and I tripped him and he went in the water and head over heels. So that time was one time when I was lucky. But those are the days. But then we all got married. And I thought maybe this song about the old gang was going into the wedding bells or breaking up that old gang of mine. You older people remember it. But that didn't happen with us. Seemed like we got married, the whole gang went off together. Only we became a little bit more mature, you know. We took things a little more seriously. We kind of hid our homebrew a little bit more than we did before. But anyhow, as we started to having family and children, we of course settled down and become pretty responsible citizens. And one thing I might mention out of this bunch, let's see, there's Dee and Delna. Is that it? Is that the only couple that's left out of that gang? But another thing I think that is important, there was never any divorces. And there wasn't a divorce in that whole bunch, was there? We kind of stuck with each other. Well, maybe we were stuck with each other, I don't know. But anyway, I think we were pretty civilized, pretty responsible kids. We're at the age when we'd like to have gone on a mission. We should have gone on a mission. But in my own case, as a matter of finances, I imagine that was pretty much for most of us. But we outlived all of our young idiosyncrasies, I believe that's the word. Got to be pretty steady, solid citizens. Dan and Teresa went to Long Beach. Dan worked for Texaco down there as a welding supervisor, I believe. And we didn't see too much of Dan for a while, but Flossie and I visited him down in Long Beach one time that I know of. Had a very good visit. And finally Dan came back. We got together again, and Dan and Dee and I were about what was left of the boys. We got playing golf together and fishing together, one thing and another, and then Dee and Delna, they moved down to California. So for these latter years, there's been Dan and I that have golfed together and fished together, and Dee and them come up on vacation. We've gotten together, the three of us, golfed a little. This went along pretty good until about a year ago. Dan and I was playing golf down here at this little course down there, Twin Lakes. I kept hitting my ball out in the brush, and by gosh, I couldn't find it. Every time I'd hit that ball, it seemed like Dan had to find it for me, and I was a doggone embarrassed. I decided I'd better learn something a little more in keeping with my capabilities. So we still see him. Dan talked at Flossie's funeral, did a very good job. And we've always had a very, very close, loving relationship. And I know he's very, very happy now with Mary Grace, as I'm very happy with Vanilla. And we give a lot of thanks to these old times. We learned a lot of good lessons, and we hope we can pass those lessons on to these younger generation. And thank you very much for your attention.
Never to return again. So goodbye, farewell, so long forever. Goodbye, my Coney Island
As you know, Dan loved to dance, especially in his younger days. Even in grade school, he used to twirl the girls, and they loved it, and him too, I imagine. Dancing was the main amusement in those days, with no radio and TV and movies, etc. After high school, he lived in Long Beach for a year. Almost every night, you'd find him dancing out at the Pike for 10 cents a dance, or at the sports arena, especially when Lawrence Welk would be playing. He never went to Coney Island to dance, but this was one of his old-time favorite tunes. He made sure not to get too interested in any of those girls he danced with during those days, but I'll bet they were interested in him.
School days, dear old golden rule days. Reading and writing and arithmetic, taught to the tune of a hickory stick. You were my queen in calico, you were my barefoot bashful beau. You rode on my sleigh, I love you so. When we were a couple of kids.
While in high school, he met Theresa Henry from Panguitch, Utah, who was attending Utah State College at Cedar City, which was held in the same buildings. They became very good friends. In fact, he never had eyes for anyone else after getting acquainted with her.
in a taxi, honey, you better be ready about 8:30. Now, honey, don't be late, I wanna be there when the band starts playing. Remember when we get there, honey, 2 steps, I'm gonna have them all. Gonna dance on both my shoes when they play the Jolly Roll Blues. Tomorrow night at the Northtown Strinners Ball.
Teresa and Dan both loved to dance and had many good times going to dances. She was such a good dancer, he never wanted to dance with anyone else, even after they were married. When they lived in Long Beach, they helped with the dancing in the MIA and also danced in the Southern California Dance Festival.
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer, do. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you. It won't be a fancy marriage, I can't afford a carriage, but you'd look sweet on the seat of a bicycle wheel or two.
Work took Dan away from Cedar City and Teresa, on and off for several years. He went to live with his sister and husband, Jetta and Art Lewis, in Los Angeles area, along with his mother and youngest brother, Tom, for about a year. He was so in love with Teresa that he couldn't stay any longer. He had to go home to see her, but work was scarce, so he worked with his oldest brother, Leigh, trucking for a mine in Grand Canyon. Shortly after that, his brother was killed in an auto accident. He then took the truck out to Nevada and lived and worked with his brother, Gerald, or Buck, as he was nicknamed, and built roads. Work took him to several places in Nevada, but he would often go back home and, of course, go to Panguitch to call on Teresa. Finally, 7 years after meeting her, he caught a ride with fellow workers in Winnemucca, where he was then working and then hitchhiked to Panguitch. This time she said, you either marry me or never come back. So they drove to Cedar City, where they got married in the city hall without family or fanfare, much to his mother's disappointment. She was out of town at the time. He had to leave the next morning to catch his ride back to work and left her to return to Panguitch alone. About 2 weeks later, he sent for her.
Oh, we've got a barrel of money, maybe we're having funny, but we'll travel along, singing a song side by side. Through all kinds of weather, what if the sky should fall? It doesn't swear together, it doesn't matter at all. Till the road grows and parted, we'll be the same as we started, just traveling along, singing a song side by side.
Their first home was an old shed which had once served as a chicken coop. The furnishings were a bed, table, and 2 chairs. After a few more years of working on roads in Nevada and Idaho, they returned to Cedar City, where he was rushed to the hospital for an emergency appendectomy. While recuperating, he learned welding from watching Henry Smith in about 1940. They moved to Long Beach, where he worked as a welder at Bethlehem Steel, Reams, and Cal Ship. When the war ended, he went as a machinist to work for Texaco near Long Beach and stayed there for 23 years. One day while working on a tower, he was injured by poisonous gas which burned his lungs. He was off work for a year and returned to work only to turn in his resignation. He didn't think that working in such a dangerous place was worth it. So we retired and moved to Twin Falls near their daughter, Venice, and her family. Not liking the snow and cold weather, they finally moved to Dixie. In 1972, they bought a house in Washington where he has now lived for 19 years. Dan and Theresa had 49 and a half happy years together through good times and bad. They've enjoyed many trips together throughout North America and Hawaii, traveling often with their friends, Joe and Elmo Phillips from California. Joe and Elmo, will you tell us about your friendship and experiences with Dan and Theresa?
I'm choked up. It's been so nice knowing them. But anyway, I'm glad that they left Utah and came to California because it made a big change in our lives. We were, first 25 years of our marriage, we didn't know anything about the Mormon church. And when we joined the church, we had friends that lived different lives, and we became active. And in Long Beach First Ward, there were either young people or old people. At that time, we weren't old. We were about 35, 40 years ago. And we didn't know which way to go. We become active, and so we started to travel a little bit. And we didn't want to go with our drinking friends too much because we were trying to change our lives. And I actually prayed for a couple to come into the Long Beach First Ward that had something in common with us, about our age, that had their children raised, that we could travel with and have a good life. And so I prayed for Dan and Theresa. And they were full-time stake missionaries at the time, and we were on the fellowship committee. So we started traveling together, and when we'd go to Hawaii or to the Caribbean, we couldn't find a church all the time. And we'd have our own little church service. We had the improvement era at that time. And we'd have a little testimony meeting, and before we'd catch a plane, we'd pray together. And gee, it was just so wonderful to have company like that. And I've never had greater friends than Dan and Theresa. And we had so much in common. We started going to temple together in Los Angeles. So this is the way it changed our lives, by their influence. And we were coming home one day, and either Theresa or myself said, you know, we're going to have our anniversary next month. And I said, well, we are too. We're going to be on the 24th of June. She says, well, we are too. And I said, we were married in 1935. She says, we were too. I said, 11 o'clock in the morning. She said, well, we were too. And it just kept up like this. Her first name was Theresa, my first name was Theresa. And we just had a great bond together. And married the same year, and that same night, Elmo, it was depression. He went back to Toronto to work after we were married that same evening. Dan went back to his job to work because they were hard up too. And we had the same situation raising our kids and being hard up. And we've had some wonderful times traveling together. When you can spend 6 weeks together in a 22-foot motorhome going to Nova Scotia and over the United States and all have a wonderful time, why, you get along pretty good together when you're in little quarters like that. And I want to say about Dan, he's so congenial. He helped Elmo with everything, connecting all the connections, and he was right out there emptying the sewage and everything. One time the sewage hose broke, and they both got kind of messed up. They went right in and took showers, and he was right there all the time, no matter what. Always doing the dishes. Josephine, you and Theresa cook, we'll do the dishes. So it was marvelous being around them, have such a good life. And then when Theresa passed away, why, it was a big sadness to us, but how wonderful that he could find another wonderful lady like Mary Grace. We have a good companionship, all of us. Now we meet at Desert Hot Springs and have a good life together, and it's wonderful that they can find such happiness, and she's such a wonderful lady. and we really enjoy her company. And Elmo has something kind of funny to say about, well, we golf together, fish together, and he wants to say something about the golfing at Penguins Lake together.
First, I want to say it's an honor to be able to be here today and celebrate Dan's 80th birthday. He's truly a great friend. We've had a lot of things in common, as my wife says. Traveling together. We've traveled together all over the country, and we're still very good friends and see each other, although he's up here in Washington and we're down in California, but we telephone together and find out what we're doing. We both have motorhomes now, and we joined a club down there in Desert Hot Springs. Desert Hot Springs is right close to Palm Springs. And Dan got his motorhome, but before he got the motorhome, he come down there and we vacationed together down there at Desert Hot Springs. So then he bought a motorhome, and now we both belong to the same club down there. So when we're not up here, why, he's down there, and we get to see a lot of each other. And I like to fish, Dan likes to fish, and so we get together and go fishing at Penguins Lake, and we have a lot of things in common. But we rent a boat and go out in the boat, and Dan gets so excited about fishing that he helps everybody else, and he cast his line out. And one time he cast it out, and he says, "Hey, somebody got a fish out there that was jumping." And he finally turned around, and it was his own fish line. And then another time we was out there fishing, and he got kind of provoked because the other boats was fishing right close to us, and we couldn't even cast our line out. So he started up the motor and turned around real fast, and he forgot to bring his fish in, and he cut the line, and we turned around and looked, and all of our fishing that we caught was all floating around on the lake. So we still have a lot of things in common. He's a very nice person to be around, and he helps you every time he can, and I just wish him many, many, many more years. Thank you very much.
We always say a family that prays together stays together, and I can say friends that pray together stay together.
Take me out to the ball game, take me out with the crowd, buy me some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if I never come back. Root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Dan is an outdoor man, a real lover of all sports: baseball, football, basketball, tennis, and table tennis. Those were his favorites until he took up golf. He also loves to fish and hunt. Nowadays, he's glued to the TV for all sports, but spends as much time as possible on the golf course. He also walks every day for exercise. One day he made the news, both on the radio and in the Spectrum. Will Archie Lindsay tell what happened?
Dan and I have been friends. Dan and I have been friends for several years. When I moved to Washington, Dan was living on the other end of the block. It wasn't long until we began to compare experiences, and I find that Dan's experiences in life are very similar to mine. I lost my first wife and remarried, and I have been very happy for 25 years now. Otherwise, my experiences were similar to his. In my youth, I was somewhat like Dan was. I had my fun, and I enjoyed life, and I did get into trouble once in a while. But since I've grown older, like Dan, I've settled down, and I spend part of my time in Wyoming and part of my time here in Utah. But Dan and I got together, and I found that Dan liked to play golf. So when I heard that he was going to have a birthday, I went out and bought a birthday card for him. And it's a little peculiar the way it happened. I bought this card and I brought it in and laid it down on the table, and somebody scribbled all over the back of it. Dan, I'll read the first part of this card to you, Dan, and then I'll try to decipher the scribble on the back of it, if that's all right with you. Whenever it is a special day, and even when it's not, you're someone I appreciate and think about a lot. I appreciate the nice things that you take the time to do. I think about the way we met and how our friendship grew. And as I send you wishes, all a warm heart can extend, I add a loving line to say, I'm glad that you're my friend. Now, this on the back here, I might have a little trouble deciphering, but I'm going to read it to you anyhow. You know how it is. I don't know whether this was some kid or some old man that wrote this, but anyhow, one morning in the spring, my telephone, it did ring. It was Dan. To me, he said, "Is it golf today?" In a few short minutes, we were away. On number 1, we did play. Number 2, we hit the same way. Number 3, our score was at bay. Number 4, it was Dan's turn first to play. He hit the ball with great speed. It sailed over the water into the clay, bounced off a pebble onto the bank, and started to roll toward the hole. As I watched, it hit the pole. I was sure it went into the cup. Dan was on his way to fame, because that is the way you play the game. And Dan and Mary Grace got to go out and sup. Now, there's some scribbling on the bottom here. It looks like some of these Indian stuff out here on these rocks, but I've figured it out. And it says AWL. Now that means all. It's also my initials. So I guess that's it.
I'm gonna
when Dan was living at home with his mother, he would go to church occasionally, although he was baptized when he was 8 years old. Teresa was active and held positions in the church, but Dan still remained inactive and uninterested until he was finally convinced to participate in the Temple Project program. Following that, he was asked to be a counselor in the Elders Quorum presidency of the Long Beach 9th Ward. Ever since, he has been dedicated to living the gospel and has served in many positions, including Sunday School and MIA presidency, bishopric, ward, and state clerks, high priest, secretary, counselor, and group leader. He has also let his light shine as an example to others as he served as a stake and full-time missionary and an ordinance worker in the St. George Temple for 10 years. Bishop Jerry Keyes was Dan's bishop at one time. What can you contribute to this period of his life?
Well, I don't know, thank goodness for repentance after all those stories we've heard about him. I don't know whether I want to contribute too much or not. Anyway, I'd never believed it if I hadn't heard it. Anyway, it's a pleasure for me to be here to enjoy this gala party here this evening for you, Brother Dan. I've known Dan for 19 years. We moved here in 1972 also. And so we've known him about as long as we've been here. Not near as long as some of you, so I'm not going to talk as long as some of you because I haven't known him that long. But it's been alluded to that he's been quite a fisherman. And can you imagine a fisherman being called to the steward of the Lord's funds? He served as a ward finance clerk for about 5 years. Now, fishermen are known to stretch the truth quite a bit, and sometimes a little untrustworthy. So the Lord must have had faith in him somewhere. And 80 years old, some people do anything to be invited to a birthday party. To me, he doesn't look like he's a day over 70 or 75, but 80, that's stretching a little bit. I think he just wanted to have the party early so some of his friends that are still here could come. I'm just wondering who his middle-age spread is. I think I've got part of his. Being a fisherman, maybe he's kind of wily and has a corset down that I don't know that we can't see. And for 80, it seems to me like he's got an awful lot of hair. Must be one of those middle-aged hair pieces or something. And to be so handsome and debonair at 80, I don't know how he does it. It must be some of that fish oil that he's got on him over the years. Anyway, it worked in attracting a pretty young bride, Mary Grace. She fell for it, and she doesn't look too bad for it either. Now, you know that the Lord once called a couple of other fishermen to his service. Their names were Simon, Peter, and Andrew, so there must be something special about fishermen. Dan's kind of like those guys. He's got lots of patience to put up with the rest of us, and that's a real asset. So it's really a pleasure to me to claim Daniel Leigh Wade as my friend. I appreciate him. He's earned it. He put up with me for 5 years in the bishopric and balanced the books every time. We didn't get one naughty letter from the presiding bishopric in the whole 5 years, to my knowledge. We appreciate him there all the time. If I was ever stuck in the mud or really needed a friend or was in deep trouble, I can't think of a person I'd rather call on than my friend Dan Wade, because he would be sure to help me. I only hope that by the time I get to be 80, if I ever reach that milestone, I'm half as good a man as him, and at least half as good a fisherman as he is. But Brother Wade, we love you. We're appreciative of being here and being part of this birthday, and we appreciate this gala celebration. Hope you have many years ahead of you, both of you. Thank you.
Asa Perks is an old-time friend. What and how were you involved with Dan?
pretty close to this. I don't know whether I can talk loud enough. Can you hear me in the back? No? I left my part in that brochure back there for Merdine to read. Maybe she better go get it and come and read it to you. Well, I'd like to give a tribute to Daniel Wade. He's a true friend. I figured he's a true friend. He came to Washington City a year before I did. And it didn't take long for us to learn that we both loved fishing. And I came from the country where the fish and streams are, but he taught me how to fish from the lake, so he was a teacher for me in lake fishing. My wife, my first wife, loved fish, and she was going blind from diabetes, but she was willing to let me go with Dan go fishing if we bring her home some fish. So between Dan and I, we always brought fish home for Ethel. I didn't keep a diary until I married Merdine, my second wife, so I didn't have much to fall back on. But since I married Merdine, I kept a journal, and as I was glancing through it the other day, I found, well, we got a good catch. We caught some 2 or 3 pound fish, so we must have had some good fishing experiences. I didn't have much hunting with Dan, I think a couple of times, but we never got a deer, but we did have a lot of exercise walking around. But one thing about Dan, I'd like to say, he had Bishop Keyes told about his job in the ward we were both in. I had a job also in the group High Priest MC. I never knew one time that we ever had to miss sacrament meeting to go fishing. There was always plenty of days to fish besides Sabbath day or any other day. And I'm sure that he's left one example in that way. When I married Merdine, she's in the red blouse here. Dan and Tressa was on a mission to the Alto Visiting Center. And we had an opportunity to have them out to our reception we had at that time, that day, on the first day of February, 1977. Excuse me. Dan went on a mission before I did, Merdine, but we followed them as missionaries to Scotland. We had something in common between the two of us. I wanted to let Dan to know that I figured him a true friend, and I want him to know me as a friend.
While strolling through the park one day,
When our Heavenly Father took his lovely wife, Theresa, home in January 1984, Dan was heartbroken and very lonely. His friend Glenn Dodds helped fill his lonely days by taking him fishing and by finally convincing him to learn to play golf. Today, golf has become his favorite active sport. Glenn Dodds, how did you finally convince Dan to play golf?
This is not one of my favorite things to do on Sunday. Like that? This isn't one of my favorite things to do. I waited until I was sure that it was half over, and I've been down there sitting under that chair, and I figured that I was going to get by without this. Anyway, it was one of the good things that happened in my life when I met Dan. And it turned out that Teresa was my cousin, so Dan and I, my life, we paralleled it quite a bit. We both lived around here and was welders and went to Southern California. But when we come back, and shortly after Teresa died, we'd meet over here at the post office once in a while and just visit a little bit. And it wasn't long until fishing come up. And you get two old fishers together, and pretty quick they know a heck of a lot about each other. But anyway, after we'd fish a while, I finally got him to go out and play golf with me. But he's a left-hander and he couldn't use my clubs. But anyway, he went off gadding about someplace, and I saw a set of left-hand clubs for sale. So I went and got them for him. And he just fell right into that golfing, and it wasn't long before he was catching more fish and hitting the ball better and everything. But anyway, he is a great guy and a great friend, and I really appreciate him.
That didn't fill his lonely nights. So when Ethel Smith Midgley brought her widowed daughter to his doorstep to meet him on Sunday afternoon, October 21st, 1984, he was taken by surprise by a pair of smiling eyes and became interested in pursuing her acquaintance. They enjoyed each other's company for the next 10 days as they found each other to have the same high ideals and interests. He gave her a package. Oh, I can't. We're having trouble here. Okay. And in the package that he gave her, in a gift that he gave her, she opened it up and found a diamond bracelet. She was thrilled, but she said she could not accept such an expensive gift. He then said, "I'd like to have given you a ring, but you were wearing your other rings on a chain because they wouldn't fit on your fingers that were so swollen at the time." With that, her mother, who was in the back seat of the car with her husband, reached over and handed her her own diamond rings and said, "Here, Mary Grace, try on these and see if you can wear them." She said she did, and as she was told, as a good daughter does, and they fit perfectly. And Dan then said, "Well, in that case, would you accept a ring?" Needless to say, this left her even more surprised, in fact, speechless and yet thrilled. Not waiting for a firm answer, he turned into the jewelry store where he had purchased the bracelet and asked her again. She accepted the invitation, and they went in and asked to look at rings. While the sales lady went out to get a special ring that he had thought would fit best, Mary Grace asked Dan if this meant a proposal for marriage. He said, "Yes, so," she said, "in that case, let me hear you ask." He quickly got on his knees and formally proposed right there in the jewelry store. She accepted, the ring fit perfectly, and they were on their way again, riding on cloud 9. It was truly a whirlwind courtship. They were married November 24th. Remember, this is a month later. Okay. Much sooner than originally anticipated. And we have to laugh about this because Vanette and I know how this is. You can't get married that soon. Right. You have to have at least a year engagement, right? That's what mothers do anyway. But they had originally decided to wait, and Dan didn't want to wait, so they hurried up. And long-distance courtships were expensive and complicated, they decided. Besides, they wanted their children to attend the temple with them, so they decided to get married before bad weather set in, which would make traveling difficult. The irony of it was that it snowed the night of the wedding, and the next day some of the roads were even closed for a while. Everyone they knew seemed to think it was okay to get married soon and not waste time. A friend of Mary Grace's in Sunnyvale, who was later found to be Dan's cousin, Mary Talbot, was shocked, along with everyone else, when she decided to get married so quickly. But then after meeting him for the first time in years, she phoned her and said, "Mary Grace, I thought you'd flipped your lid for sure when you came home engaged, until I found out you were going to marry my cousin." Dan and Mary Grace have now lived happily together for 6.5 years and look forward to many more years of happiness together. Thank you.
Jack Miller is going to entertain us with some more music for you to dance to if you care to.
Well, I certainly appreciate this. I didn't really, this is a surprise. It was kind of a secret thing. She was always going in the study and, "Don't come in here." When Phyllis would call, I want to talk to Mary Grace and you get off the line. But, boy, I really appreciate this beautiful evening. It's been lovely and been wonderful, and appreciate all the remarks that's been given and friends that's come. And old Glenn there, picture was in the paper. He's a championship horseshoe pitcher. The picture was in the paper yesterday. You know, he was really a lifesaver for me when Tressa died, because it was really lonesome, you know. I'd been up to Sheraton, got snowed in, and about 5 foot of snow, and come home, and he just happened to come around. He was a cousin of Tressa's, but boy, his wife was over in Finland, and we fished and we played golf, and we just did everything that summer. And then Mary Grace comes along and spoils it all. But I appreciate all your beautiful cards, and especially appreciate you coming here tonight, and for everybody that helped with this program. And I'm grateful for our family. We had, boy, that little old house of ours, I don't know whether the Fifes or the Crookston across the street noticed, but it was really rolling. We've been sleeping everywhere. They wondered, well, where are we going to sleep? Well, there's a place right over there, sleep there. So it's been really a wonderful, well, 2 or 3 days. It started a couple of days ago, and it's still going, and really wonderful. You know, I really appreciate all these people in good old Dixie and all our family that comes down here and get away from that old cotton picking snow up there. They really enjoy it, you know. Getting down. John came down this morning in the snow, and oh, he said it's beautiful down there. It is wonderful, and I certainly appreciate all you friends. Some of my friends from Long Beach, and some that's moved up from Long Beach and lives over in Santa Clara, and I met a few from Long Beach here over at the Winter Haven 2 or 3 months ago that had come up here and moved up from Long Beach, and they'd found them a new husband, new wife, and it's really a wonderful place, and I really love this country, and love all you people. And thanks a million for coming, and for all your wonderful cards, and for all these beautiful girls singing, and for the entertainment we've had. And thank you. Thank you.
This next song I'm going to sing, I feel is appropriate